I've noticed a lot of people default to leashing or receiving a leash without a second thought as to if it's actually worth it or not. This goes for both the jungler and the laner. Junglers, especially ones that are not comfortable with their clear speed, will ask for a leash to compensate for it. Or they just simply don't know enough about lane matchups, so they always ask for a leash. However, laners have a tendency to leash because they don't want their jungler to tilt, or they don't know enough about their matchup, so they just leash. When you're deciding if you want to leash as the top laner, you need to be thinking, how much does it affect me? For example, if you're playing something like Irelia, ideally you start in the lane because you want to be able to build up your passive. Same thing if you're playing something like a Tryndamere or a Renekton. Now yes, you can build up Fury off of the camp, but you would really rather be at the minion wave at the beginning for those kinds of champions. Unless there is a specific matchup where you're fine with it. But in most cases you're not going to be. Or if you're playing into something like a Darius, they can easily cheese you. You need to keep that in mind because you may have to do the long route and the leash might not be all that worth it anyway. You also have to consider how fast is your leash and will it require you change what ability you start. For example, sometimes I want to start W as Garen, but if I leash, it's going to be a really bad leash starting with my W. So I may feel inclined to start with Q or E, but that's messing up my laning phase in some matchups. From the jungler's perspective, how much is your laner's leash actually going to help you? If you've got a Shen, that can make a significant difference because he has a very fast leash, and in some matchups or in a champion that has a particularly low clear speed, then that could change your options in the game. However, if you're playing something like Karthus that has a perfectly fine clear really fast, you don't need to be worrying about getting a leash. Allow your laner to get the advantages, or at least avoid the disadvantages of leashing. Back to the line of thought of with Irelia, her leash is not very good because she doesn't have any ability that she can spam on it. In general, her abilities are low damage on their own. So as the jungler, you would typically much rather just not give up the information, because as the jungler or the laner, you have to consider that you're giving information to the enemy team, where the jungler's starting, where they're likely going to be pathing. So unless there is major value being provided in these extra few seconds that are being cut off, it's better to go without the leash. This is why most of the time in higher elos or in pro play, you see them going without leashes because they would rather not give up that information and they understand how much it can help out the laners to not be leashing. If there's any doubt whatsoever, default to leashless.